A baby Sasquatch caught on camera by a hiker in the deep woods of Massachusetts. Is that possible? Or are we dealing with another shameful hoax? Let's find out. Hey guys, this is Nick. Welcome to Strange Spotting. This video was referred to me by a viewer called Jeremiah Sutton. I haven't seen him for a while in the comment threads, but I promised I would give him a shout out, and here it is. Thank you so much, Jeremiah, for sending me this video. So let's look at the footage in its entirety first.
Is that? Oh my God.
I don't know how you guys feel about this video, but I find it very fascinating and one of a kind from a certain point of view. You may have come across this clip in a few compilations put out by other paranormal themed channels, but for what I've seen, it was always in a far worse quality than the one I'm presenting, which is borrowed directly from the original source. If we take the moniker Bigfoot and Sasquatch a bit loosely, since we don't exactly know what the subject in the frame for a few seconds is, we are in front of a piece of footage depicting an alleged undiscovered creature shot with a good camera, good lens, with good definition, good lighting conditions, and no camera movement, at least not during the 2-3 seconds of visual contact. In other words, this is not a blob squatch. Given how many times I've read comments using the potato camera argument to disqualify the existence of the most famous furry cryptid, I hope that side of the fence can at least appreciate the quality of the footage under scrutiny. Unfortunately though, there is one glaring problem with it. It's shot from a considerable distance, and when I will enlarge certain photograms, it's still possible that someone will be unhappy. Please keep in mind that the footage in its original format is very good before jumping to conclusions. With that little contentious topic out of the way, let's take a look at some background info. The Baby Bigfoot in Massachusetts video was published on September 7th, 2015 by the author and YouTube user Bilbo Swaggins. It has roughly 56,000 views and 159 comments as of today. The user has a total of 56 subscribers and only 9 videos, with the last one published 6 years ago. It's clear that this video hasn't brought him too much attention, and also looking at the little content on display, cryptozoology was not the chosen theme for the short-lived channel. The description of the video in question reads: I was testing out the depth of field on my new camera by filming a patch of leaves in the Lincoln Woods Wildlife Reserve in Leominster, Massachusetts, and immediately I heard a noise a few hundred feet from me. After that, I saw something at 016, and I still can't explain what it was. I sifted through the comments to find something noteworthy from the OP, and apparently the original title for the video had a question mark at the end to reflect his perplexity over what he captured on camera. There are people accusing him of faking this, as is par for the course, but what's drawn my attention is this comment where Bilbo openly declares that he thinks it's possible he was on the receiving end of a prank. I know this doesn't automatically mean we can let him off the hook, because posting a fake but sensational video without declaring you recorded a cryptid can still result in a lot of attention and perhaps some cash, but it's still worthy of consideration. The two other significant details of his channel are: 1. The fact that he hasn't posted any videos with CGI creations or other alleged cryptids, which is a good sign for obvious reasons. Apparently he was only interested in filming nature. 2. A follow-up video where he returned to the same location, but there's no sign of the Sasquatch, which, considering the modus operandi of some hoaxers, is also a good sign. The information gathered so far from the OP's channel does not corroborate the plausibility of the subject being an undiscovered hominid, of course, because, as some of you know, I consider the information conveyed by a photo or video file as the more reliable material and therefore the object of most research. But the fact that we have an OP and that he never makes any claims regarding the nature of the subject does not substantiate any hoaxing activity either. The good quality of the footage is also a positive element, because it allows me to dismiss 2 possibilities out of the gate. Take a look at the cropped video. I see no rational argument for this to be a misidentification of an animal indigenous to the area, and neither for this to be CGI, because compositing this scene among several trees at different distances is simply impossible. There is a distinct natural quality to this footage that leaves only 3 options regarding the subject's true nature: an escaped ape, a human in a costume, or an undiscovered species within the primate order. The costume option naturally can be split into a costume hoax or a costume prank, and given the lack of negative preconditions, it seems only fair to assign equal probabilities to each. The next logical step is to examine how the camera holder behaves in the clip.
Is that? Oh my God.
I chose to use on-screen text to highlight the sequence of events, an element that often provokes skepticism in alleged recorded sightings of cryptids is why the person is pointing the camera in that specific direction, and it's often taken as a sign that they're complicit in the hoax. From this point of view, the footage under scrutiny constitutes even more of a rarity. It's not only crisp and clear, but it portrays a perfectly plausible chain of events. The author heard a loud noise, similar to a branch being stepped on or broken, turned around in the direction he perceived the sound coming from while still recording. His eyes picked up on some movement, and he consequently zoomed in. He voiced his surprise and confusion both after the sound and the visual contact, and the non-verbal cues in his voice sound genuine. I cannot in good faith entirely dismiss the possibility that this is a well-planned and well-coordinated sequence of events involving the author, but I do think a prank is more plausible at this point. Now let's take a closer look at the subject, and specifically at the 2 most glaring features. Number 1, it's running on 2 feet. Number 2, it's covered in reddish-brown hair. Allow me to repeat, these 2 things are clearly discernible and therefore undisputable, and here's where the escaped ape hypothesis must be dismissed. The only species of the Hominidae family with discoloration are those within the Pongo genus, commonly known as orangutans, and orangutans are known to only walk on 2 legs. As you can see in this clip, they are not capable of running in an upright position. Also, if you put an orangutan next to our subject, it's quite easy to appreciate that the anatomy is very different. Orangutans have a slightly protruding snout, far more slender build, and much longer arms. Since there are no records of red chimps or gorillas since humans have discovered and recognized this species, we can reject the ape hypothesis. We're left with 2 possibilities regarding the precise nature of the subject now: human in a costume or unknown primate, and with 3 possibilities about the nature of the events recorded, since a human in a costume could be due either to a hoax or a prank. All that's left for us to do is to examine the features that are a bit less conspicuous, unfortunately due to the entire frame of the subject never being on display, and to the loss of definition caused by the photogram's enlargement. It's not possible to estimate the body ratios with confidence. What I can do is estimating the height. This tree here is very close to the subject, and after reviewing a list of the most common trees in the Leominster, Massachusetts territory and comparing the bark, shape and length of the trunk, I surmise that we're looking at an eastern white pine, or Pinus strobus. According to the USDA plants database and a few other sources, this species of pine at maturity has a trunk diameter ranging from 20 to 40 inches. This is most definitely a mature specimen, and here are the estimates calculated for different brackets. Albeit mature, it doesn't look like a particularly large tree, so I think the most plausible range is between 25 and 30 inches. Thereby, the subject's height is somewhere between 4.46 feet and 5.36 feet, equal to a height between 1.36 and 1.63 meters. This result implies, based on the average recorded heights for North America, that the person wearing a costume should be a teenager, a woman, or a man with a stature well below the average, possibly affected by dwarfism. The probabilistic breakdown for the three hypotheses is essentially unaffected by the results of the height estimate, because it's entirely possible that a teenager or a woman would don a costume for a hoax or a prank. What's most pressing right now is to address the physical features on the visible portion of the subject, its behavior and movements, the psychological aspects of a possible prank or hoax, and some other smaller environmental details that may be lost on a superficial viewing. One very peculiar thing about the subject I noticed is the lack of a visible neck. I took 4 pictures of commercially available Bigfoot costumes and put them side by side. Thing is, the typical human morphology regarding head, neck and shoulders remains clearly visible. The human head is positioned at a certain distance from the shoulders. It's almost impossible to camouflage because shoulder pads to hide the neck would be visible in the subject running, but our subject clearly has a head far closer to the torso with a very short, very large and very muscular neck that seems incompatible with human morphology. The other thing I noticed is one pertaining locomotion, and one that I've had the chance to observe during my video analysis of the Sisladopsis Lake Bigfoot footage. We get comparably less footage of the baby Bigfoot running, but one thing is very clear: it runs with a hunched position. It maintains a 30-35% inclination of the torso for the entire time it is visible, arms extended forward, and a further inclination of the head versus the torso. This is simply not how humans run. We do incline the torso, but perhaps around the 5 or 10% mark, so much less than this little guy. We do not keep our arms extended forward, and we certainly do not incline our head downwards like this. Our skeletal structure is simply not built for this. The other aspect that gives me pause is how similar the two subjects look when put next to each other. Take a long look at them. They are almost identical. This, of course, is not to say that they are one and the same, but to highlight a logical quandary. What is more plausible? That there is a costume designer out there producing costumes with these specifics exclusively for a secret ring of hoaxers? Or that these two subjects belong to the same species, one with big enough similarities to humans that they can be confused for us under certain conditions, but with physical features, posture and body mechanics different enough to be appreciated by a keen observer? These two findings are enough to reassess the probabilities, with the undiscovered primate hypothesis looking much more plausible than before. There's something more that's very anomalous and that's easy to miss. Look at how the subject jumps when turning slightly to the left, perhaps to avert an obstacle on the ground like a fallen tree. Look at how it raises its shoulders and the arms sideways before hitting the ground. This is a remarkable aspect when considering the typical human mechanics in a forward jump. Look at a simple scheme. We instinctively extend our arms forward but bent at the elbow. I invite you to try it yourselves, and you will notice that this movement is deeply natural and embedded in our brains, which means we evolved it over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Why does the subject jump this way? I didn't realize it at first, but then it came to me. I have already seen this jumping mechanics at least twice. Here and here. Unfortunately, I have no background info on the first clip, but the second one was recorded in Russia a few years ago and has become a bit of a celebrity within the cryptozoological circle. Now, I'm not saying they are 100% real because I haven't analyzed them yet, but I can say that even to the naked eye, the one recorded in Russia by a father and son hunting is almost impossible to fake. That thing running is most likely not a human being and probably too big to be a chimp or a gorilla. This similarity with other alleged Bigfoot recordings is not proof by itself that the Massachusetts video is real, but it certainly cannot be discounted as a mere coincidence. This type of forward jumping mechanics is not human, and if this is indeed an undiscovered primate, it's very likely that it has a far longer stretch of arboreal adaptation in its past than humans. On the other hand, we have three undeniable facts emerging from the analysis. Two different types of physical mechanics completely divergent from those studied in Homo sapiens, and an upper body morphology that constitutes a glaring anomaly. Taken together, these are enough to make the undiscovered primate hypothesis almost conclusively proven, but this footage has more to offer. How fast is the subject moving? I've taken the same tree used before as a reference, and the distance covered by the subject from this photogram to the moment it's in this precise spot before jumping is exactly 14.5 times the tree trunk diameter. To cover this distance, it takes exactly 2030 milliseconds. Remember, we made a conservative estimate of the trunk's diameter being between 25 and 30 inches, and therefore our subject's height to be in the range between 4.46 feet and 5.36 feet, equal to a range between 1.36 and 1.63 meters. The resulting speed is between 10.15 and 12.18 miles per hour, equal to a speed ranging from 16.33 and 19.59 kilometers per hour. I concluded that with this height, for the subject to be a human in a costume, it would have to be either a teenager, a woman, or a very short man. I put a reference on the table for the 100 meters female speed record set by Florence Griffith Joyner in 1988. I know the subject's speed is not even close, but if you factor in that it's running on very rough terrain with non-human mechanics, wearing a bulky costume and achieving that speed in about 30 feet or 10 meters, whereas speed records are achieved over 100 meters on a perfect terrain with very light clothing, the only logical consequence is that the subject is very fast, too fast in fact to be a human. The last detail I want to point out are the sounds. The man recording this footage is alerted by a noise that sounds like a branch breaking or tree knocking. This type of noise has been reported countless times by eyewitnesses and also by people who don't get a visual encounter. What's easy to miss though is another very different sound right at the end of the video. Here it is. This, at least to my knowledge, is not a sound emitted by any known animal, and if we take them together, these sounds are very consistent with the idea that this could be a very young individual of an unknown primate species, being alerted by a parent, who then proceeds to alert also the other members of the family or clan, which is typical behavior for primates of all species around the world, as well as dramatically matching the kind of behavior described by Sasquatch contactees. Since the probability of this being a hoax is at this point essentially negligible, the question we need to ask ourselves is, What are the chances that someone would orchestrate a prank involving a child or a woman with an upper body deformity and capable of running and jumping at great speed on rough terrain while wearing a bulky costume and using non-human running and jumping mechanics that replicate exactly those visible in other videos allegedly depicting undiscovered humanoids? All of this with the perfect timing of the two highly unusual sounds. The answer to this question depends on the personal worldview, of course, but I'm here to give you my answer, and my answer is that there are zero chances. In light of all these findings, I consider the Baby Bigfoot in Massachusetts video incontrovertible evidence and the present analysis scientific proof of the existence of an undiscovered humanoid primate species inhabiting the wild areas of the North American continent. I would love to hear your opinions on these results, as well as suggestions on alleged evidence or topics you would like me to analyze. If you enjoyed this content, I suggest watching this other video where I analyzed the Adigea Bigfoot footage. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys in the next one.